Hey folks, Dave here, and I like knives. Here to talk to you today about this big old boy. This is a zero tolerance 005, a 005. This is a zero tolerance 0562 or the 562. This is very good. I'm not sure why I hesitated so much on coming up with a positive attribute, but good things to come. Before we get into the good and the gold and the garbage things to come, let's line it up. Here it sits beside an Ontario Rat number 1 and 2, so you can see that the blade is significantly bigger than on the one beside a Spyderco Delica and Endura, so that you can see that sharpened blade length is about the same length, but overall blade length is not because of this little weird notch here. A Spyderco Paramilitary 2 and Para 3. Once again, similar thing. Overwhelmingly more sharpened blade length on zero tolerance, but about the same overall blade length because of that finger choil. Here with the Benchmade Scriptillion and Mini Grip, so that you can see that it has about the same grip area. And here are some other big boys, the SOG CLXR, the Spyderco Shaman, Benchmade Contigo, and Cold Steel Recon 1. So you can see that size-wise, it and the Shaman are definitely the shortest of this group. And because of clickbait, there's a pro tech. All right, folks, let's start with the gold, shall we? And the whole message here, a lot of it really does revolve around because that's incredible. This has an absolutely incredible opening action, closing action as well. And a lot of that action is due to the bearings inside the pivot, which just make it nice and smooth and take out a lot of the resistance that you would otherwise have from washers. The ergonomics are pretty well incredible with these very slight finger denotations, finger choils, I don't know. It gives you good grip area. And while back here, the handle does start to slide away, there is just a little bit of jimping in there. I do wish that it were less severe, less sharp corners, because they are squares. But it does give you just a little bit of grip to get in there so that your pinky doesn't threaten to kind of roll off like on some other knives. With that said, the jimping is recessed, so again, it's not a terrible thing. It's not like on the spine of this Benchmade Contigo where if it focuses, you can see the little nubs sticking up there. No, instead the nubs go in. Still sharp corners because they are squared off, but better than it could have been. Jimping right there, also very slight, not aggressive. It gives you a place to find traction and not to find pain, which is a fair trade-off. Definitely easy to get in there with one of these for more precision cuts. The bat ears are something that I will always be in love with. This is a Rick Hinderer design, and there are a couple of ways that you can see that. The bat ears, gosh, I love bat ears. Also, this knife is so Rick Hinderer that it has 2 different blade stops and 2 different lock bar stops. So you can see right there that the bat ears are there to interact with the stop pin. What you might not know until I tell you is that there's also a stop pin back here. Right there you may be able to see it. Now that is only a secondary stop pin because you gotta be super careful when dealing with a blade this big, I guess. So this is the stop pin that actually interacts with the stop face, and you can see that, actually probably not just because of the coloration of the blade, but you may be able to see right there that the G10 front-facing scale comes up just barely, like millimeters. I don't know how small a measurement that is, but just barely shies away from that corner. And that's so that that stop pin does not interact with the G10. It interacts straight with the titanium. And as far as the 2 different lock bar stops, that screw right there is to the lock bar interface. So the problem with having a titanium frame lock is that the titanium and the steel of the knife blade are of two different hardnesses. So over time, as those two metals continually interact, say on this 0550, eventually one of the metals is going to start to give way and you're going to have blade rock. What the lock bar interface right there means that won't happen, because this interaction is just steel on steel. It's not steel on titanium. It also serves the dual purpose of when you push the lock bar that way, it stops it and catches on the inside of the handle scale. So does that. So there is no way to get the blade to go that way, and there is no way to get the lock bar to go that way, making this an incredibly secure and hopefully long-lasting and robust knife. Now, one of the complaints against a bearing knife is that the bearings can get gumped up and blah, 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 blah. But, like, they're fine. These are recessed, they're well taken care of. The bearings are not going to be a huge problem on this. It's incredibly overbuilt and robust. This is kind of what I imagine to be kind of your peak zero tolerance, especially in this colorway, because I may have a problem with tiger striping. But even as massive and solid and boulder-esque as this thing is supposed to be, they didn't miss out on the smaller details. So, like I mentioned, that jimping right there is well done. The tolerances for everything are absolutely incredible. This is something that I've been working with for a while, and there's no loosening up in the lockup. The blade is beautiful, and not just because of the coloration. For this with some coyote handles, maybe looking into that at some point soon. But this is, you may be able to notice, yeah, there you go, the blade grind goes down there. This is Hinderer's slicer grind. And it's kind of supposed to split the difference between a saber grind and a flat grind, is my understanding. I might not be explaining that right. The point of the story being that it is very strong. So as the grind goes up here, there's a big belly, there's a whole lot of very flat area. It's not overly thick, making it still, for as boulder-esque as it is, still a good slicer. Thank you, slicer grind. The choil, well hit, all that kind of good stuff. One of my favorite smaller details are here in the screws. They are all T8. That pivot, these body screws, they're the same size, they're all T8, meaning that you only need one-ish, we'll get to that, screwdriver to take out all of these screws. Well done. And the general materials are just incredible. This is zero tolerance, bringing power to bear. This is a 20 CV blade. These are titanium handles and G10 on bearings with, well, zero tolerances. Incredibly well-made knife with the highest end of materials. If you're looking for kind of the ceiling of how good a knife can actually get, there's a reasonable argument for it being around this point. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars on a custom piece when the ZT-0562 exists. You know what you're getting. It's zero tolerance. They make good stuff. However, what they make is not always perfect. Neither is this. It's got a little bit of garbage, and it's got meaningful garbage. I'm going to start off with the weight. This is 5.6 ounces. By the way, this is a little bit over a 5.5 inch blade, 3.6, over a 3.5 inch blade, a 5-inch handle, and it's smaller than it could, thinner than it could be, but it's not insignificant at a 1/16 of an inch. The weight is 5.6 ounces, and what you may be able to see if I shine some light on it is that there's not really any milling in there. That's something that definitely could have been done. The titanium under the scale, you can punch holes in that and it'll reduce weight, but what else? There is a carbon fiber version of this and a titanium version, a full titanium, which I believe are both lighter. There's a lot of variants here. I don't know if there are a lot, but there are several variants of this knife that are really all worth checking out, because if they're anything like this, they're going to be very good. The pocket clip is not insignificant to me, and it is part of the mods that I had to do on this. Starting off with it's obviously a very deep carry knife, so off the bat you would think that that's incredible. Unfortunately, how it came to me, there wasn't a whole lot of ramp there. It was much more flattened off and much more shallow, which means that I couldn't put this in my pocket. I actually had this knife. This is another one of the unfortunate handful of knives, and for similar reasons, that I had for a lot longer than I've been able to enjoy. And it took me taking the pocket clip off of the knife and bending it correct, putting a little bit more tension here, taking a little bit of tension off there, that kind of thing. And now it slides in and out pretty well. However, that right there, the lock bar relief cutout, again, it's unfortunate because it interacts with the pocket clip. As you go to take this pocket clip out of your pocket, before it gets here, it's going to catch there. At least in my experience. For this kind of price with this kind of upscale market aim, Zero Tolerance absolutely could have and should have, I don't know if they should have, done an internal lock bar relief, leaving this a flat scale so that your pocket clip doesn't have to interact with that. Or cant it a little bit off to one side, make the relief smaller so that the pocket clip interacts somewhere over here. Unfortunately, it is locked into the one position, so there's no angling that can happen. And to that point, it's actually locked in general. So there is no way to take off the pocket clip and rebend it without removing everything and taking the whole scale off. I figured that out the hard way. So it is actually pinched in here by that screw, and you have to remove a whole side just to deal with the pocket clip, as opposed to on most knives where you just have to undo a couple of screws and honestly it doesn't impact the knife at all. With this, you have to completely disassemble. And remember where I talked earlier about T8s being cool? That's a T10. I don't know why. Usually that is, but that's a T10. That's very silly to me. That's very dumb. Don't do that. The pocket clip is reversible, by the way, so you can flip it out to the other side. It is a frame lock though, so it's not ambidextrous. But that makes no sense to me and understandably caught me a little bit off guard. So that sucks. The pivot is going to be free spinning. You can see that there are screwdrivers on both sides. This is not the worst way to do a pivot, but it is an incorrect way to do a pivot and a popular way to do a pivot, unfortunately. What that means is that to take this knife apart, you are going to have to use 2 screwdrivers and turn one while you hold the other, which is completely unnecessary because if this knife can get it right for $250 fewer dollars, then you've got no excuse. You've got no excuse. Make them captured pivots, like you already do. And really what's going to be the worst problem here is going to be that right there. That is not what that flipper tab is supposed to look like. Similar to that one, although I didn't take as much material off of that. This, I should be putting up a picture, but this flipper tab, as it comes from factory, is a sharp hook that legitimately hurts your finger, or hurts my finger because I have tiny little sissy hands, but hurts my finger to press down on and flip. And because the detent is so dialed in and so good, you have to generate a lot of force with the finger, which means a lot of force jabbing onto that point, which is uncomfortable. So what I did, and also For whatever reason, before it can overcome the detent, with the longer hook style flipper tab, where's the, okay, right, you see how it clicked in right there? That's the detent. So it's not coming past that. So that is the point past which you have to, well, it's down in the lock bar, but it's the point past which you have to overcome to close the knife. With the flipper tab being as big as it is, it hits your thumb before you can do it. I took a Dremel and ground out a lot of the sharp point, so now it's a whole lot better than it was. But it used to be a very intentional thing of having to like train your muscle memory to close the knife. It's a whole hassle. It's actually so bad that before I was able to take it down and bend the clip out, I was trying to find an aftermarket pocket clip for this thing that would, I don't know, move off to one side, come down a little bit lower, be a little bit more propped up so I can get it in my pocket, something with the pocket clip. And this problem is so bad that every place I tried to find information on a pocket clip, by the way, I can't find any. If you make one, let me know. But everywhere I looked for information on a pocket clip, the conversations would inevitably devolve into just people complaining about the flipper tab, which is valid complaints. Go get yourself a Dremel and fix it yourself. However, price-wise, this is also a $280 knife. So you shouldn't have to. That feels like a design flaw. You shouldn't have to. That feels like a design flaw. You shouldn't have to take care of those things by yourself. You shouldn't have to for $30 or $20 or whatever this thing is. You shouldn't have to for $300. With that said though, with everything fixed or taken care of, or just generally made a lot better than it was, I've complained about this, but it is a bearable problem. This is a knife that I do greatly enjoy carrying now. But for this price, this is going to be, generally speaking, one of the highest quality pieces that you're going to find on the market. This is, and I don't know if this variant is still available, but Tiger Stripe the world, baby. But this is, simply put, going to be one of the best bang for your bucks, one of the best knives that you are going to be able to find. I don't necessarily suggest starting your search here. The Ontario Rat number 1 is looking very nice this time of year. But if your end goal is just getting to the absolute pinnacle of build quality and materials and etc., and just the pinnacle of the good returns for your money, I guess, the value pyramid. It sounds weird saying this about a $300 knife, but this may be near the pinnacle of the value consideration. It's very expensive. Don't buy it if you don't have the money. But if you do, it is definitely worth a shot. If you can have the time and patience to fix a couple things yourself. Folks, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or stories, let me know down below. And other than that, y'all have a great day.